Hello everyone, this is Dr. Manish Patel and you are watching my channel Let's Dissect Anatomy. I am making the video in this channel after a long time because of some personal health issue, but I promise I'll make it regularly now onwards. Okay, so today we will discuss the important topic, that is subclavian artery. So without any delay, let's get started. Subclavian, the name is derived because it is located below the clavicle. It is the main source of blood supply actually for the upper limb, and that's why it is also known as the artery of the upper limb. However, it also supplies the parts of thoracic wall, head and neck, including brain, through its various branches. So first we will see the origin of the subclavian artery, from where it arises. So there are two subclavian arteries, right and left. The right subclavian artery arises from the brachiocephalic trunk behind the right sternoclavicular joint, while the left one arises directly from the arch of aorta. Okay, so I'll show you in the picture. Here you can see this is the arch of aorta and it has three branches, 1, 2 and 3. So here you can notice the left subclavian artery arises directly from arch of aorta, while this right subclavian artery arises from this brachiocephalic artery. Okay, so remember this difference from origin of right and left subclavian arteries. Now the course on each side, it arches laterally like this from the sternoclavicular joint up to the outer border of the first rib. So here you can see from the picture, this is the first rib. So left subclavian artery, it originates from here and it extends up to the outer border of the first rib, and right originates from here, extends up to the outer border of first rib like this. Okay, so here you can see from the picture the right and left sternoclavicular joint, behind which you can see the subclavian arteries. Now the parts of the subclavian artery, on each side it is divided into three parts by the scalenus anterior muscle. If you remember, the maxillary artery also divided into three parts by one muscle, that was lateral pterygoid muscle. Same way here, the scalenus anterior divides the subclavian artery into three parts, first, second and third part. The first part extends from its origin up to the medial border of the scalenus anterior muscle. Second part lies behind the muscle, and third part from its lateral border to the outer border of the first rib. So here you can see, for example, this is the scalenus anterior muscle, right, and this is the subclavian artery. Okay, so from origin to the medial border of the scalenus anterior muscle, this is the first part. The part lies behind the muscle, it is the second part, and from lateral border of the muscle up to the outer border of the first rib, this is the third part. Okay, so first part extends from its origin to the middle border, second part lies behind the muscle, and third part from lateral border to the outer border of the first rib. And termination, as you all know, it is at the outer border of the first rib, where the subclavian artery continue as an axillary artery and supplies the upper limb. So this is the origin, divisions means parts, and the termination of the subclavian artery. So you can better understand from this picture the three parts, first, second and third. The second part lies behind the muscle, and first and third on medial and lateral side of it, and ends over the outer border of the first rib, then it continue as axillary artery and supplies the upper limb. Now relations of all the parts. So anterior relations and posterior relations. Before describing these slides, I'll show you the picture that you need to remember. All the relations you have to write from this picture only. Okay, so here you can see this is the subclavian artery, okay, and this is the scalenus anterior muscle. So the part medial to it, this is the first part, the part behind it, this is the second part, and the part lateral to it, this is the third part. Okay, the structures situated anteriorly, and these are the structures situated posteriorly. So we will describe the same structure from the picture. Okay, so before the content, I'll show you the structure situated anteriorly to the first part. Here you can see internal jugular vein, common carotid artery, and vagus nerve. These are the three contents of carotid sheath, if you remember. Then you can remember this is the sternohyoid muscle, sternothyroid muscle, and sternocleidomastoid muscles. So by that way you can remember three muscles starting from sternothyroid, sternohyoid, sternocleidomastoid, and three contents of the carotid sheath. So that makes it a 6 contents for you. Okay. In addition, you can also notice this is the anterior jugular vein. Okay. So now the structure situated behind it means posteriorly. So here you can see this is the lung, apex of the lung. Then the covering of the lung, it is called pleura, it is cervical pleura, and this dotted line, it is the suprapleural membrane. So three structures in the posterior part. So here you can see anteriorly common carotid artery, vagus nerve, and internal jugular vein. You can remember all these three together. Then second set, sternothyroid, sternohyoid, sternocleidomastoid. 6 contents. In addition, vertebral vein, anterior jugular vein, and thoracic duct. And posteriorly 3 structures, suprapleural membrane, cervical pleura, and apex of the lung. Now the relations of the second part. Now here anteriorly scalenus anterior muscle. आपको पता ही है कि स्केलेनस एंटीरियर के पीछे का पार्ट सेकेंड पार्ट है. ओके, तो उसके आगे क्या होगा, एंटीरियरली क्या होगा, स्केलेनस मसल इटसेल्फ. सो स्केलेनस मसल, राइट फ्रेनिक नर्व, ट्रांसवर्स सर्वाइकल वेन, सुप्रास्कैपुलर आर्टरी एंड वेन, subclavian vein, anterior jugular vein, so many veins are there, and a posterior part of the sternocleidomastoid. So again we'll see over the diagram. Here you can see this is the scalenus anterior muscle, beside which you can see a phrenic nerve, then you can see a suprascapular artery, then subclavian vein. This is anterior jugular vein, posterior part of this sternocleidomastoid muscle, suprascapular vein, transverse cervical vein. Okay, so these are the structures situated anterior to the second part, and posterior to the second part again same, all three, suprapleural membrane, cervical pleura, and apical part of the lung. Same will come in the posterior part, same as first part. Okay, but in addition, anterior and posterior, here comes a superior relations as well. So this yellow dot you can see, it is the upper and middle trunk of the brachial plexus, so that will come in the superior part. Okay, so posteriorly you can notice same, all three relations of the first part, and superiorly upper and middle trunks of the brachial plexus. Now the relations of the third part. So anteriorly many will come from second part as well. Suprascapular artery, now to subclavius, prevertebral fascia, subclavian vein, external jugular vein, transverse cervical vein, suprascapular vein, subclavius muscle, middle one third of clavicle, posterior border of sternocleidomastoid. All this will come in the third part. Here you can see this is external jugular vein, then transverse cervical, suprascapular, investing layer, clavicle, subclavius muscle, subclavian vein, prevertebral fascia, suprascapular artery, now to subclavius. Okay, so these are the structures situated anterior to it. Then posteriorly, again you can see some part of all that three structures will also come behind it. So posteriorly again three repeat: cervical pleura, suprapleural membrane and apical part of the lung. In addition, two more structures will come in the posterior relation. They are scalenus medius muscle and lower trunk of brachial plexus. Okay, so third part posteriorly, here you can notice the first and second part वाला जो था तीन वो तो है ही, साथ में दो एडिशन में ऐड हो गए, that they are lower trunk of brachial plexus and scalenus medius muscle, and superiorly same as second part, upper and middle trunk of brachial plexus. So nothing to worry about to remember all these structures. You just need to remember that diagram only. Okay, so this is the diagram. You must remember thoroughly. You can easily write down all the relations without any tension. Okay, so now next we will discuss the branches of the subclavian artery. Subclavian artery gives off 4 branches. This can be asked as one-liner also. Write down or enumerates the branches of the subclavian artery. So mainly it has 4 branches: the vertebral artery, internal thoracic artery, thyrocervical trunk and costocervical trunk. Rarely, occasionally the 5th branch is also present. Whenever it is present, the name is dorsal scapular artery. So first 4 are always present, the 5th one is occasionally present. The thyrocervical trunk is further divided into 3 branches. They are inferior thyroid, suprascapular and transverse cervical, while costocervical trunk further divided into superior intercostal and deep cervical. Okay. So here you can see from the picture, this is the vertebral artery. It goes upward along the cervical vertebra. It passes from the foramen transversarium of the each cervical vertebra and it reaches the base of the brain and supplies the brain. This is the internal thoracic artery which goes downward and supplies the structures within the thorax. Here you can see this is the thyrocervical trunk, immediately divided into 3 branches, and the 4th branch, that is costocervical trunk, it lies behind the scalenus anterior muscle posteriorly in the second part. Okay, so here you can better understand from the picture vertebral artery, internal thoracic artery and thyrocervical trunk. The thyrocervical trunk is again further divided into transverse cervical, inferior thyroid and suprascapular artery, and in the second part the costocervical trunk will arise from it. So first 3 branches means vertebral, internal thoracic and thyrocervical trunk will arise from the first part of the subclavian artery, while the 4th branch costocervical trunk will arise from the second part of the cervical subclavian artery. Okay, but this is only for right side. From the left side, all 4 arises from the first part only. Okay, why? Remember the first slide, because the left will direct arises from the arch of aorta and the right will arise from the brachiocephalic artery. So थोड़ा दूर से उसका origin है, थोड़ा आगे खींच जाता है. That's why the costocervical trunk will arises from the second part. Otherwise, in the left side, all 4 from the first part, and on the right side, first 3 from the first part and costo from second part. Okay, so now in short about each branch. The vertebral artery, it is the largest branch of the first part of the subclavian artery. It has a very long course and ends by supplying the base of the brain. It is divided into 4 parts. Okay, आपको ये सब याद रखने की कोई ज़रूरत नहीं है, फर्स्ट पार्ट कहाँ से कहाँ पे है, सेकेंड पार्ट, थर्ड पार्ट, like that. You just remember it is divided into 4 parts only. That's it. The second one is internal thoracic artery. It arises from the lower aspect of the first part of the subclavian artery. नीचे से arise होती है, opposite the origin of thyrocervical trunk, near the medial border of the scalenus anterior muscle. Then it runs downward and then medially in front of cervical pleura and ultimately ends by supplying the structures within the thorax, right? No need to remember the relations as well. The third one is thyrocervical trunk. It is a short, wide vessel, arises from the front of the first part of the subclavian artery, close to the medial border of the scalenus anterior. It is situated between phrenic nerve and vagus nerve. And almost immediately after origin, it divides into 3 branches: inferior thyroid, suprascapular and transverse cervical. The fourth one is costocervical trunk. It arises from the posterior surface of the second part of the subclavian artery on the right side and from the first part on the left side, जैसे मैंने पहले बोला. It arches back over the cervical pleura and then it divides into superior intercostal and deep cervical arteries at the neck of the first rib. So that is all about 4 branches of the subclavian artery. Now applied anatomy. The first term, a cervical rib, may compresses the subclavian artery which decreases the radial pulse. अब सर्वाइकल रिब क्या है? एक्चुअली जो C7 वर्टेब्रा है उसमें एक एडिशनल डेवलपमेंटल सेंटर होता है कोस्टल एलिमेंट्स में, मीन्स अराउंड दी एंटीरियर पोस्टीरियर ट्यूबरकल वाला जो एरिया है रिब का, वहाँ से एक एडिशनल डेवलपमेंटल सेंटर डेवलप होता है जो जब ज़रूरत से ज़्यादा ग्रो हो जाए लिटरली तो इट विल एक्वायर अ शेप ऑफ रिब एंड यू कैन क्लियरली seen in X-ray. It looks like a rib. It is situated above the first rib. It is not a rib, but it looks like a rib. जब वो 2 to 3 सेंटीमीटर जितना हो तो वो slightly compress करता है subclavian artery को. Subclavian artery, as you all know, it's a artery of the upper limb. So जो हम radial pulse feel करते हैं यहाँ पे वो decrease हो जाता है, weak हो जाता है. But when the length of this cervical rib is more than 5 cm, it severely compresses the subclavian artery and it will decreases the blood flow to the upper limb. Initially it causes pain and numbness, tingling sensations over the upper limb, and ultimately the muscle will get weaker and weaker and ultimately will get paralyzed. Okay, so that is the cervical rib. The aneurysm of the subclavian artery may form in the third part of the artery, and its pressures on the medial brachial plexus causes pain, numbness and weakness in the upper limb. Aneurysm means third part of the cervical subclavian artery dilate हो जाती है. अगर dilate हो जाती है तो क्या होगा, उसके आजू बाजू के जो स्ट्रक्चर है उस पे ऊपर उसके ऊपर कंप्रेशन करेगी. तो ब्रेकियल प्लेक्सस इज द मेन नर्व सप्लाई ऑफ द अपर लिम्ब. तो आपको रिलेशंस में आपने देखा कि अपर मिडल एंड लोअर ट्रंक ऑफ ब्रेकियल प्लेक्सस है रिलेशंस में, तो उसको कंप्रेस करेगी तो नर्व सप्लाई डिक्रीज हो जाएगा, तो पेन, नमनेस एंड वीकनेस फील होगी अपर लिम्ब में. देन राइट सबक्लेवियन आर्टरी may arise from the descending aorta. एक्चुअली क्या होता है, राइट सबक्लेवियन आर्टरी कहाँ से अराइज होती है? ब्रेकियोसिफेलिक आर्टरी में से, राइट. ब्रेकियोसिफेलिक आर्टरी कहाँ पे है? आर्च ऑफ एओर्टा के राइट साइड में ऊपर की तरफ. पर आर्च ऑफ एओर्टा ऐसे है, पर डिसेंडिंग एओर्टा नीचे है, बिसाइड्स दी स्टर्नम, स्टर्नम के बाजू में। तो अगर वहाँ से अराइज होती है, in that case it passes posterior to the esophagus and which may be compressed and causes the difficulty in swallowing. So this condition of difficulty in swallowing because of the compression of the esophagus due to subclavian artery is called dysphagia lusoria. The fourth one is obstruction to the artery proximal to the origin of the vertebral artery may lead to a stilling of the blood from brain through opposite vertebral artery. This condition is called subclavian still syndrome. This is an important one-liner or a question. अभी ये कैसे होता है मैं आपको बताता हूँ. एक्चुअली राइट एंड लेफ्ट वर्टेब्रल आर्टरी ऐसे जाती है, फिर ऊपर जाके वो एक दूसरे के साथ एनास्टोमोस होके एक सिंगल आर्टरी बना देती है. इसका नाम है basilar artery and ultimately they ends by supplying the base of the brain. अगर फॉर एग्जांपल ये वाली आर्टरी में यहाँ पे ब्लॉक है, ओके, तो ब्लड यहाँ से आगे नहीं जा पाएगा, बट ब्रेन को तो ब्लड सप्लाई मिलेगा थ्रू द अपोजिट वर्टेब्रल आर्टरी लाइक दिस. ओके, यू रिमेंबर व्हाट इज एनास्टोमोसिस एंड इट्स इम्पोर्टेंस. तो एक टाइप का एनास्टोमोसिस है, तो ब्लड सप्लाई हैम्पर नहीं होगा ब्रेन का, बट एज यू ऑल नो इट हैज़ अ लॉन्ग कोर्स फ्रॉम लोअर पार्ट ऑफ द नेक मीन्स स्टर्नोक्लेविकुलर जॉइंट से स्टार्ट होती है अप टू द बेस ऑफ द ब्रेन. तो इतना लॉन्ग कोर्स है, तो अगर यहाँ पे ब्लॉकेज हुआ तो ब्लड यहाँ से तो जाएगा, पर पूरा ब्लड ब्रेन में नहीं जाएगा, थोड़ा ऐसे करके यहाँ पे भी आ जाएगा, राइट, यहाँ पे भी आ जाएगा. तो ये क्या हुआ, ब्रेन का जो हिस्से का जो ब्लड था वो थोड़ा सा अपोजिट वाली ब्लॉक वाली सबक्लेवियन आर्टरी ने चोरी कर लिया, स्टील कर लिया. दैट्स व्हाई दिस सिंड्रोम इज कॉल्ड सबक्लेवियन स्टील syndrome. Okay, so this is all about the subclavian artery. Hope you like this video. If you like the video, hit the like button, share it to your friends who are studying in BDS or MBBS or physiotherapy or any other medical field. Anatomy is a common subject for all. Okay, so see you in the next video. Till then, goodbye. Thank you.